Hello, I'm Paul Adams, Senior Editor at PopularScience.com. I'm here at the White House with Heather Zeichel, Deputy Assistant to the President for Energy and Climate Change. We're going to be addressing questions about energy and the environment for about 30 minutes. We've chosen some questions from Popular Science readers, but we'll also be taking your questions live on Twitter using the hashtag WHChat. Heather, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
The first question is from Wayne, who asks, a significant portion of the population doesn't believe that human-caused climate change is real. Do you see that as an obstacle, and how do you approach it?
I think, as you heard from the President last night, as we look at growing evidence, growing body of scientific evidence, the need for action is now. The President talked about not only the importance of acting, but also the fact that we have a number of tools available to us within the federal government that will allow us to transition to a clean energy economy, but also do that in a way that makes sense from a job creation perspective, and ultimately with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Matt190 asks, how much of the climate issues do you think are going to be solved by legislation, and how much by new technological solutions?
I think, when the President talks about an all-of-the-above approach to these challenges, I think certainly we're going to, the administration has thought strategically about a long-term policy. We know today that we have the ability to utilize renewable sources that bring us carbon-free energy, but we also know that we need to continue to invest in research and development for the future technologies. One of the things that the President specifically highlighted in the State of the Union last night was the importance of developing an energy security trust. This is a $2 billion trust that can be generated by revenues from development of oil and gas on our federal lands, but that funding can specifically be set aside for investing in advanced R&D technologies that will allow us to back oil out of the transportation sector. As an administration, going back to this all of the above approach, we have doubled down on the opportunities around renewables as well as energy efficiency, but we've also made historic investments in research and development. And some of the programs at the Department of Energy, our first of its kind ARPA-E program, for example, is looking at some of the nation's toughest energy and climate challenges and really focusing on the research and development that we're going to need over the long term. There's no silver bullet solution to our nation's energy and climate challenges. We need to, as the President talks about, really embrace an all-of-the-above approach.
Speaking of R&D, Steve Brown from Facebook says, what is your administration's view on the potential of the molten salt reactor fueled by thorium developed at Oak Ridge National Laboratory to provide energy cheaper than coal, end carbon emissions, make America energy independent, and create millions of jobs in the energy and manufacturing sectors of the economy?
Well, I can't speak specifically to the merits of the project. What I can tell you is, we really, as an administration, view the intersection between energy and climate policy is something that's key, as the questioner asks or demonstrates. It's key to our ability to create jobs and economic security. It's key to our national security, and it's key really to protecting our environment. I think what, as an administration, we have focused on is really recognizing that in the near term we're going to have to continue to develop safely and responsibly our domestic oil and gas resources, but we also need to pull those technologies, wind, solar, geothermal. We need to double down on the opportunities around energy efficiency and really do that through the lens of what is in the best interest of this nation going forward as we think about our energy and climate objectives.
Right now, Kate Johnson asks, the President in the State of the Union offered natural gas as a clean alternative to oil, but what about fracking and other dangers to our environment?
Thank you for your question, Kate. Obviously, as we think about natural gas production, and I think the president even mentioned this last night, that production cannot come at the expense of our air, our water, and our other natural resources. That's why this administration has focused on doing a few things. First and foremost, for the first time ever, for the development that's happening on federal lands, natural gas development and fracking that's happening on federal lands, we are working right now on a new regulation that will enhance integrity of the well, address water management issues, and deal with some public disclosure issues. All of those are very key policy components as we think about natural gas fracking. The other key area around this is just additional and ongoing research and development to look at some of those environmental aspects, some of the public health aspects, and really pursue and double down on opportunities to ensure that we are developing this resource safely and responsibly. I think at the end of the day, we believe as an administration we have the ability to develop this robust resource safely and responsibly. And the good thing about natural gas, certainly as we're thinking about our climate objectives, is that it is the cleanest burning fossil fuel, and certainly to date, some of the progress that this country has actually made in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions has come from natural gas. So, as we are thinking about the long term and thinking about what we need to do to really transition to a low carbon economy, this administration very much believes that there is an opportunity and a role for natural gas to play.
Another question about new technology from Alexander Yale. Why is the only major experimental fusion reactor in the US, the NIF, being used for weapons testing?
Again, I can't speak specifically to that reactor, but what I can tell you is, from the very beginning days of this administration, we have placed a premium on the Department of Energy and ongoing research and development. One of the programs that we were able to stand up in the very first year of this administration was a program that was funded after the DARPA initiative at the Defense Department. It's known as the ARPA-E program at the Department of Energy, and it is very much focused on solving some of our nation's largest energy challenges, looking at nuclear power, looking at, and from my perspective, one of the most exciting programs that we have going on at ARPA-E is the work around electrification and batteries. We have made significant progress in the United States, both in terms of increasing the manufacturing capacity and creating jobs around batteries, but we've also been able to really improve the technology over time and bring the costs down. That's good for consumers, but ultimately electrification and utilization of batteries, specifically in the transportation fleet, allows us to not only reduce significantly our dependence on foreign oil, but also to reduce dangerous carbon pollution.
I have a question from Jeff Oath, O-E-T-H. Jeff asks, is there a plan to end subsidies to big oil?
Well, Jeff, I have a similarly difficult last name to pronounce, so I appreciate that. I also appreciate your question. This is something when we are having making incredibly difficult decisions in Washington about what programs to cut. How do we choose some health programs over education programs? That is all done at the same time. The oil and gas industry is getting $4 billion in tax breaks each year. The president has called on Congress to roll those tax breaks back. Each and every year that he's been in office, he's proposed in his budget to eliminate those breaks, and that's something that we are going to continue to work on in the days and weeks ahead.
When, asks Andrew Sidesinger, will the EPA create carbon standards for existing power plants, and how aggressive will they be?
As the president indicated last night in this State of the Union, he called on Congress to act and pass comprehensive energy and climate legislation, but also underscored the fact that we really can't wait given the climate imperative. He called on his Congress, on his cabinet to identify additional executive actions that the administration can take to do three key things. First, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Second, to increase resiliency and preparedness for cities. And third, to transition to a clean energy economy. Obviously, as we look at these opportunities, the EPA will, I think, have an important role to play in terms of our broader agenda and our approach. But I would also say that one of the unique things that this administration has done is not to just think about the agencies in terms of their line responsibilities, but to really think across the administration about how we can use our regulatory authority, how we can use our budget authority to make a significant down payment on the President's broader energy and climate initiatives. Some of the things that we've done across the administration that have already had a meaningful dent on our greenhouse gas emissions include the joint work that the Department of Transportation did with the EPA to double the efficiency of our cars and trucks by 2025. It's going to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions and has the added benefit of reducing our dependence on oil. The Department of Interior, for example, has done incredibly important work looking at and siting renewables on our federal lands. We now, on our federal lands across the country, have some of the world's largest wind and solar facilities in the entire world. And the Department of Energy has an important role to play on energy efficiency for appliances. It might not be on the front page of the news every day, but appliance standards, whether that's for a walk-in freezer or a battery charger, have a meaningful impact in terms of bringing energy costs down for consumers, but reducing carbon pollution as well. So we are going to look across the federal government at opportunities to deliver on the President's broader climate initiatives and broader energy and climate goals as he laid out in the State of the Union last night.
Here in the Twitter feed, people are excited about thorium, and they wonder if you can say anything a little more specific.
Unfortunately, I am not able to say anything more specific about thorium. And I certainly respect the questions that are coming in and would love to work with you to be responsive to some of those additional questions. I guess I would just say, taking a step back, I have worked in the administration since day one, and this is a really exciting time to think about and to work on energy policy for a variety of reasons. We as a country have the ability to secure our energy future, which is something that even a decade ago was not something we could possibly dream of. Oil production is at a 15-year high. Gas production is at an all-time high. But at the same time, we've also been able to double the generation of renewable energy. This is energy from wind, solar, geothermal. And I think that, while if you take a step back, we've made such significant progress. All of these opportunities have allowed us in the process to create jobs, to save consumers money, and ultimately really make some significant progress in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And as an administration, we are looking for that sweet spot, for that win-win opportunity, and that's something that you can continue to expect to see from this administration in the second term.
Calypso Fugit asks, how can the government, other than tax reductions, increase incentives to pursue solutions to major energy and sustainability questions?
It's a question that we think about every day here in the administration. I think one of the challenges that I think we've rolled up our sleeves on is just what exactly is the role of the federal government as the largest purchaser of energy in the country? How do we make sure that we are leading by example in the federal government? We have taken historic action across all of our agencies to put in place sustainability goals that include everything from water management to our carbon footprint. We have doubled down on the opportunities in our fleet to transition to advanced technology vehicles. So we recognize that the federal government needs to lead by example, and we've taken a number of important steps there. I think more broadly, there are a lot of important opportunities through public-private partnerships and things that we've pursued, everything from a green button initiative that empowers consumers to have the ability to choose when they're buying electricity and when they're not, and really have more control over their energy bills. We've launched through the Clinton Global Initiative something called the Better Buildings Initiative, which is very much focused on improving the efficiency of the commercial building sector. So I think a lot of what we are learning and seeing, certainly the tax code is helpful as a tool, but a lot of progress has been made, I think, in sort of forging public-private partnerships around some of these challenges and really thinking strategically about how we all bring our collective resources to bear to make some significant improvements in this area.
Ms. Ward says, the fact is that the climate is going to continue to show change. What can the government do to prepare for that?
Absolutely true statement, and I think part of what there's broad recognition in the federal government that we need to prepare. As you think about the climate challenge, there's mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is what you need to do in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and on the adaptation side, the question is, how do we work with communities and states to prepare at the federal level to prepare for a changing climate? We have just last week, in fact, released some of the first climate preparedness plans for on an agency-by-agency basis. That's going to be guiding decisions for everybody from the Department of Interior to the Department of Energy and EPA and more. I think the next set of activities that we are focused on, is sort of the work that Secretary Donovan is doing around rebuilding after Superstorm Sandy. What are the lessons learned? How do we apply those more broadly? And how do we make sure that as we're building our communities, as we're coming out of some extreme weather events, that we're doing that in a way that's going to last? So I think the learning curve is high, but I also think that but there are some important lesson sharing and information sharing activities that are happening. We're going to continue to build on all of that progress and success that we've seen to date.
How can youth get involved in the clean energy economy? It's a question from Sustain US.
Great. It's a terrific question. I mean, I think youth can get involved in obviously a variety of ways, and that means everything from what you're doing at home to utilize more efficient technologies, your light bulbs, making sure the mantra of reduce, reuse, recycle is obviously incredibly important. And I also think as certainly as somebody who is a consumer of electronics, now a consumer can be more and more empowered about energy efficient appliances and sort of being informed as you're going through that process. And certainly I think more broadly, on the climate agenda, on the clean energy agenda, there are important additional opportunities. If this is an issue that's important to you, making your voices heard, engaging in the congressional discussion, engaging in the discussion about policies and decisions that are happening at a state level. Engagement there, I think, is very much key.
A few people have asked about this. Here's one from EEB Hub. Can you speak a bit about the importance of energy efficiency in buildings? Not everybody is asking about buildings. Can you speak a bit about the importance of energy efficiency in the administration's plans?
Certainly. Energy efficiency is, whether that's in the transportation sector or in the built environment, has been a very important driving force as we think about our energy policy. We as an administration made historic progress when we weatherized through some existing programs at DOE and HUD. We weatherized 1 million homes. That means we brought 1 million families new, more energy efficient technologies that will allow them to save money ultimately on their energy bill. But more broadly, we have, as an administration, I think, got at a lot of the low-hanging fruit. And to your point, we need to think not just about, the transportation sector or just about homes. It's really across the entire economy. Where are the opportunities? Last night in the State of the Union, the President set forward a bold but achievable goal of doubling energy productivity by 2030. That's a goal that has been embraced by Democrats and Republicans alike. It's a goal that has strong support from utility companies as well as business leaders. And we know that ultimately that goal is achievable and something as an administration we're going to work towards. The President additionally spoke about a program that he will be previewing in the 2014 budget, which is, it's called an Energy Efficiency Race to the Top. This is a $200 million program that promotes forward-leaning state policies to cut energy waste. So that's certainly, it's a new program that we're very excited about, and I think more broadly, we are very prepared as an administration to utilize all opportunities around energy efficiency.
Michael Kellerman has just asked, what plans does the U.S. have in working with other countries in fighting climate change?
Well, to your question, this is certainly an issue that is a challenge that is global in nature, something that the President recognizes is a conversation that we need to have here at home, but it's also a conversation we need to engage with in the global community. We have taken a number of steps to date to engage through different international forum, whether that's the Major Economies Forum or the COP. Engaged to move the needle in the international community around some core objectives for emissions reduction targets. We are going to continue to look for and fully utilize those opportunities. At the same time, I think we will be well positioned. The fact that we have made so much progress to date in terms of reducing emissions technologies, but we've done it in a way that relies on existing technologies. We also see the opportunity to take the lessons learned from the energy efficiency standards that we've done or the car rule that we've done and help additional countries try and embrace those policies as well, all with an eye towards doing what we need to globally to reduce carbon pollution.
Checks and balances tweets, former Interior Secretary Babbitt argues for protecting an acre of public lands for every acre used for drilling. Thoughts?
Certainly, this administration has pursued a very robust set of policies around the conservation agenda, specifically through Secretary Salazar at the Department of Interior. We've used the Antiquities Act. We've established new national park units, and I think have really tried to strike the right balance in terms of additional leasing, but paired with setting aside additional crown jewels from our public land system, and that's with an eye towards a conservation legacy and protecting those areas of environmental sensitivity. And I think as much progress as we made in the first term, we have many opportunities to build on that record of progress in the second term, and certainly would expect to see more in that vein from the incoming and new Secretary of Interior.
Liz Swafield asks on Facebook, how is this administration going to make long-term plans for environmental conservation and renewable energy stick when we are bogged down by short-term politics and polarized political parties?
Thank you for your question. The interesting thing about energy policy is that while it's easy to paint everything as controversial and difficult, I think if you look at some of the core components of our energy and climate agenda, there are areas of bipartisan agreement. I mentioned the energy efficiency goals that have bipartisan support. I mentioned the President's Energy Security Trust Fund and the work that would ultimately do to help wean our cars and trucks off of oil. Again, another concept with bipartisan support. It wasn't all that long ago, just at the end of the year, when a very critical decision was made to a very large extent meant life or death for many in the wind sector, and that was a decision over whether or not we were going to extend what's known as the production tax credit for wind power. It expired at the end of 2012, and because it was expiring, there was no certainty and predictability for the industry. So we were hearing reports from across the country that decisions were being made to lay off workers. Congress came together. I mean, you had everybody from Karl Rove to President Obama supporting the extension of the production tax credit, which certainly isn't a policy initiative in a group of supporters that you see on a daily basis. But Democrats and Republicans came together and got the extension done. I think that was just literally a matter of weeks ago, and demonstrates that there are opportunities in the clean energy arena that are not red versus blue issues, but instead they're green issues. And I think the key goal for us is to continue to identify where those opportunities are. And in some cases it might be more incremental than we want it to be, but I think building on where we know we have areas of bipartisan agreement, looking at opportunities around renewables and energy efficiency, all of those things have a history of bipartisan support, and we're going to continue to double down on those opportunities.
A question from Rabbits. In the consumer's mind, clean energy often translates to more expensive energy. What is the plan to mitigate that?
Thank you. Thanks for your question. I spent the beginning of this interview talking a lot about the research and development that the administration is investing in through the Department of Energy. I think if you actually take a step back and look at the story around wind and the story around solar, story around battery technology, while it's true some of these fledgling technologies do cost more initially, the continued investment in research and development, the more we're proving these technologies out, the more we're looking and thinking strategically about how to create demand for these technologies over time brings the price down. We have a great story to tell about some of the renewables I just mentioned, and I think we are well positioned to only see more successes and improvements in those areas, and certainly as an administration, that's what we're going to focus on.
This is the last question we have time for. It is from Cliff Ransom, who happens to be a Popular Science editor. Cliff asks, what is the most audacious yet still plausible idea in energy right now?
Wow, that's putting me on the spot. Look, I think I actually think where you can really drive home this intersection between job creation, energy security, and environmental benefits is actually really, really around energy efficiency. And this, again, getting back to non-controversial issues, issues that have broad bipartisan support, We absolutely, I think that doubling down and, rolling up our sleeves and actually getting to work on this broader goal of doubling energy productivity by 2030, we know that this can be done. We know that this can bring consumer savings, and we know that we have the technology today to get it done. So, I think it's an incredibly exciting goal. I think it's something that's absolutely achievable and in the best interest of this nation. So I think you can expect to hear more from the President and this administration on that going forward.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who participated. If you missed any part of the conversation, the entire video will be available on whitehouse.gov and on popularscience.com within 24 hours.